Hello, guys. Welcome to the workshop, Story, the P2P IP network. Before we get started, let me introduce myself a bit. So my name is Tim. I'm currently in charge of infrastructure partnership, DevRel, and also validator program at Story. So I also have some background in researching academically with copyright and blockchain. So as we know, Story has been focusing a lot on the AI agents side, but for this workshop, we will go back to the origin. What is IP? And then what is our tech stack? How layer one supporting us to create a better copyright system for existing world? So first question is, what is IP? So we've seen on the slide that PayPay is an IP, Nike is a patent, and then you have song, you have animation, code snapshot, games, and then you also have the section of real-world assets, such as designers, brands, and also physical items. So in law, IP is a very complex terminology. It's a bundle between two types of rights. One is the ownership that consists of whether you are able to use the product, whether you are able to trade the product. And then the second part is the property right. So the simple example of property right is, can I use this IP for meme coin? Or can I use this IP for NFT? For example, when PayPay meme coin first released, they probably don't have the property rights to do so. So they are technically, they are violating the copyright of original owner. So let's looking back to a bit of the history of IP and why copyright law exists. So in the early days, when we first discover literature, when we first discover words, or when we first discover the format of displacement, we start printing books and art. In order to protect the ownership of those creations, we need a layer of protection, where copyright law as an IP layer came into place. The first IP law actually introduced in 17th century in UK, where they want to protect the ownership of publications. So over the past 20 years, we experienced from two-dimensional books and arts into three-dimensional, such as radio, film, television, series, and gaming. And then now we are coming into the era of social media and generative AI. So the existing copyright law seems to be lag behind. We are yet to find a good way to tackle down and supercharging the evolution of technology, such as how we protect the data for AI models, or how we claim the ownership of image or text generated by AI models. So we can set a statement that the problem is the failure of current intellectual property layer. We are applying medieval system to godlike technology. So we need an internet native IP system where Story comes into place. Story is the world's IP blockchain. We want to tokenize world's creativity, making it programmable, making it easier to use, and also identify the ownership. We want to work with the internet instead of against it. So the programmable IP layer. So how do we achieve this vision of making it programmable? We split into three sections. So the protocol layer, the proof of creativity, merged with the general protocol layer and also our programmable IP layer license. And then it's our native layer one, the Story network, to boost to supercharge all the creativity protocol. So Story is a layer one. We leveraged EVM execution and also using Combat BFT for our consensus layer. So we also added a precompile to supercharge and transversing computing over the graph data structure for our IP graph. Lastly is that with this layer one, we can easily execute a lot of IP-related specific logic for IP oracle and also dispute automation. And then with layer one, you kind of build this decentralized network for global composability of IP in their license and token. So imagine every chain can use us as an IP settlement layer, and also all the application on top of our blockchain can interact with each other, no matter which application or creator tooling you use. So a bit more detail into our modular approach of blockchain. So as mentioned earlier, we are EVM execution, combat BFT consensus, so which means we are EVM compatible. So any EVM chains application can easily transition to our chain with all the transaction types and also development tool. We also support EIP 1559 and other EIPs. In the future, we will also have switched to state-of-art consensus algorithm. A bit explanation of how story validator works. So in order to run a validator, you need to run two types of client. The execution client, the story gas, which is fork of existing gas, including the meme pool and also IP graph precompile. And then the next client you need to run is the consensus client, where we added and also updated existing Cosmos modules such as staking, slashing, and minting, with the ABCI++ adapter of Combat BFT. So in between the two clients, we use Engine API to interact between each other. The second part I want to deep dive in a bit into our layer 1 is the staking mechanism. Imagine Story want to elaborate and break into the real world use cases. So we actually had a design of a special system in the staking mechanism. Thinking like you are in the bank, you want to stake your, you kind of want to save your money into the bank and then earn the APY. Normally it's a fixed staking period, right? You got to stake for a year or 2 years where you gain the incentivized. So at Story, we have a chain native reward distribution system where allow delegators or validators to choose the staking period. Depending on the staking period, you get more multipliers. And also, we designed a special phase called singularity phase. So before singularity phase, none of the validators are able to gain any block reward. Only once the singularity phase ends, the block rewards start to generate to create a fair environment for staking. As you can see on the diagram on the left-hand side, so we have currently flexible staking, 90-day staking, 360-day staking, and 540-day staking. Obviously, the more dates you commit, the more reward you'll get, and the higher multiplier it is. Lastly, I want to touch base on is the IP graph precompile. So this is one of the reasons why we choose to build a layer 1 rather than sticking on Ethereum ecosystem or layer 2. I think a lot of people initially had a lot of confusion or doubts why Story want to build a layer 1. So we did a lot of internal benchmark testing and experiments around layer 2s and layer 1. As you can see, like we do IP. So when IP has a derivative, it counts as it starts to build the IP graph. The first version of our protocol, it was deployed on Subfolia, but during that time when we're trying to reach to, for example, remix over 670 parent IP, it reached the gas limit. So we kind of start to limit the creation of creators. And then also when you're trying to distribute a royalty towards those trace back to the parent IP, it's very hard because you need to go through all those layers, and then that will also exceed the gas cost. So for Story VM, what we did is we precompiled IP graph within the gas client, so the usage stays near consistent even over 1,000 remakes IPs, and also distributing royalty towards those 1,000 IPs will remain to 200K gas. As you can see from the diagram on the left, where we did a comparison between EVM native protocol and also our layer 1 deployed protocol. So what's the future for layer 1, our layer 1? There are two areas we want to look into. One is the graph vector database. As we said that we precompiled IP graph. So we're trying to see how we can actually optimize further into the IP graph transversal and computation, and then enforce the IP-related AI inference and training, so where we can use the graph database or vector database to actually segment out the IP into different vectors. And then the second part is the validator-related innovations. One of the most excited items on the roadmap for the near future is actually the decentralized IP oracle, where one of the future imagination that I witnessed is that are we able to allow normal Web2 companies to start running the validators, acting as a IP oracle, where we can further using those data to prevent infringement happening or earlier detecting the copyright violation to support our automated dispute resolution. So next up is the proof of creativity protocol. So the POC, so I will use POC for now, since it's easier to pronounce. So POC is actually split into three major components. One is the module. We have the license module. For top module is the license module, royalty module, dispute module, and grouping module. And then we have the account-based system, which is built on top of the EIP 6551, the token bounded account, where you have once you register your IP, it generates two assets. One is the IP account through the smart contract, and then the IP asset via NFT. And then we also designed a specific access module to further preventing people violating the system. So you need to follow the rules of IP account to the module, and then the interaction between module, and then between module and registry. Lastly is the periphery contract, where you can see it as a traditional SDK to a lot of operation. We build this layer of abstraction to support developers easily on board to Story, because we know like when you want to mint a token and also attach a license at the same time, sometimes you need to write your own logic. But with the periphery contract, you can just call the single method to support your all the general execution action. So here is a slide diagram, a complex diagram introducing how the flows between different assets type and modules collaborating together. So we go from the bottom of the diagram, where we have the ecosystem application. So the ecosystem application first need to register the IP assets. And then after registering the IP asset, you generate the IPA and then the IP NFT. Doing this process, you can also choose whether you want to directly attach a license or not. If you want to attach the license, you go through the license module, finding the license, for example, whether it's no use, no commercial, or commercial usage. And then through the modules, we now go into the license and access module and also royalty token. So every license is actually NFT as well. So we further elaborate the DeFi usage on those token assets. For example, you can use IP5 or Color marketplace to trade your license between each other, and also trade your royalty token on the swap or DEX for further usage. So slightly into detail what each module is meant to be doing. So for license module, it taking care of configuring the license template. So as I mentioned, we have 3 default templates, but user can also define their own templates upon their needs. And then registering derivative will need to go through license flow as well. And then minting the license token and attaching the license token to existing IP. And then we have the royalty module, which it taking care of the royalty flow for different. It taking care of the royalty flow between parent IP and child IP, where for each parent IP we generate a royalty vault. So through that vault we can aggregate back all the related remix royalty back to the original user. So to sort out the problem between derivative creator and original creators, the cliff between those type of users. And then we have the dispute module. So currently the dispute, for dispute, we work with UMA. So UMA will taking care of the arbitration policies, where we as a protocol layer level, we just label the assets. So after labeling the assets, when the IP creator raise a claim, the assets will no longer be mintable or attached to any parents or even making any further interaction with the protocol. Lastly is the grouping module. So for a lot of NFT collections, you can imagine you have a lot of IPs. You want to register them and then sharing the royalty of that collection. But certainly before a grouping module came out, it's very hard because you need to register and interact with each single IP assets. But with grouping modules, you just add all the IP assets into that group, directly interact with group as a instance rather than IP assets as instance. So one of the other use cases we are looking at is AI model training. Imagine you have a lot of image IP assets, and then you want to use it for model training. You can't really interact with each image IP assets, so it will take a very long time, and also it's very computation heavy. So with group module, you can just bundle all the image IPA into that group, and the model will just directly interact with that group rather than each individual assets. So lastly, I think one of the most important innovation we're trying to do is the programmable IP license. So what we witnessed over the past years, or more like a general common sense, is that people don't understand their rights. People don't read laws. So the initial creation of the smart contract was a cryptography term that was created in 19th century as well. The initial idea of smart contract is trying to transition contract license into machine-readable language for us to easily automate those contracts. At Story, for our license template, we remap the existing US law, copyright law. We extract all those attributes into visualized component for user to modify their rights. So visualizing your rights is a huge improvement in human society, because it's reduced a lot of time for people to understand what's going on within the rights. So this is one of the IP kit component we're trying to build. We want to use this component to support creators to further understand what rights they hold, and further for majority of the people to understand what right they hold and what rights they can give out. So through there, we can create a better licensing process and further preventing the copyright infringement or violation. Lastly, our aim is very simple. Just like USDC, on-ramp and off-ramp fiat. So Story, on-ramp and off-ramp IP. Thank you very much, guys. So this is the workshop for Story.